Winter night in Chicago. Evan Hayes quietly watched the man in the black suit slip an envelope to Tony, the bodyguard standing near table 12. Tony checked his watch, glanced at the back exit. Again. The woman he was supposed to protect sat 10 feet away, cutting into her steak, unaware. Alexis Vale, billionaire, untouchable, alone. Evan had served her table enough times to know when something was wrong. He grabbed a pen and wrote something. If he was wrong, he would lose his job. If he was right, she might not leave this restaurant alive. Evan Hayes had worked the night shift at Lexington for 3 years, long enough to read a room without thinking, long enough to know when a customer wanted conversation and when they wanted to be invisible, long enough to notice when something felt off. Tonight, something felt off. He moved between tables with the kind of efficiency that came from repetition, refill water, clear plates, smile when it mattered. His daughter was asleep at his mother's place across town, and he had 4 more hours before he could go home. 4 more hours of sore feet and forced politeness and tips that sometimes covered groceries and sometimes didn't. Table 12 was occupied by the same woman who came in twice a month. She always sat alone, always ordered the same thing. Filet mignon, medium rare, no wine, sparkling water with lime. She wore tailored suits that probably cost more than his rent, and she never looked at her phone while she ate. Evan didn't know her name the first few times he served her, but one of the other waiters had whispered it like it mattered. Alexis Vale, billionaire, real estate, investments. The kind of person who owned buildings instead of living in them. But when she sat in that corner booth, she didn't look like power. She looked tired. She looked like someone who had forgotten what it felt like to sit across from another person. Evan understood that. Her bodyguard stood near the wall, always within 10 feet of her table. Tony. Buzz cut. Black suit. The kind of guy who didn't blink much. Evan had served them enough times to recognize the routine. Tony never sat. Never ate. Never spoke unless Alexis spoke first. He just stood there, scanning the room like he was waiting for something to go wrong. Tonight, Tony wasn't scanning the room. He was watching the door. Evan noticed it halfway through his shift. Tony kept glancing at his watch, not the casual glance of someone checking the time. The tight, nervous glance of someone waiting for a signal. Then the man in the black coat walked in. He didn't sit, didn't order, just walked straight toward Tony like he knew exactly where he was going. Evan was carrying a tray of dirty plates toward the kitchen when he saw them. The man said something. Tony nodded. Then the man handed him an envelope. Evan slowed his pace. He didn't stop, didn't stare, just kept moving, kept his head down, but his eyes stayed on them. Tony slipped the envelope into his jacket. The man left through the front door without looking back. Evan pushed through the kitchen doors and set the tray down harder than he meant to. One of the cooks glanced at him. "You good?" Evan nodded. He wasn't good. He was trying to decide if what he just saw was his business, or if he should pretend he didn't see it. He walked back out into the dining room. Alexis was still eating. She didn't look up, didn't notice Tony standing 5 feet away, checking his watch again, checking the back exit. Evan had been a waiter long enough to know what people looked like when they were planning something. Tony wasn't protecting her anymore. He was waiting for her to finish her meal so he could move her somewhere else, somewhere specific. Evan wiped down an empty table near the bar and kept his eyes on Tony. The bodyguard shifted his weight, looked at the exit again. His hand went to his pocket. Not the pocket with the envelope. The other one. Evan's chest tightened. He had a daughter, 7 years old, brown hair that tangled no matter how much he brushed it. A laugh that sounded like bells. She was the only reason he took this job. The only reason he worked nights and slept 4 hours and smiled at people who didn't see him. If he walked away from this, Nothing would happen to him. He would finish his shift, go home, kiss his daughter on the forehead while she slept. But Alexis Vale wouldn't make it to her car. He didn't know how he knew. He just did. Evan grabbed the check from the printer and walked toward table 12. His hands were steady, but his heartbeat wasn't. He set the folder down in front of Alexis without a word. She glanced up at him for the first time that night. Her eyes were gray. Calm, the kind of calm that came from practice. "Thank you," Alexis said quietly. Evan nodded. He turned to walk away, then stopped. He pulled the pen from his apron pocket and flipped open a napkin. His handwriting was fast, uneven. "Your bodyguard sold you out." He folded the napkin, slipped it into the check folder, and walked back toward the bar before his nerve could break. His hands were shaking now. He poured water into a glass he didn't need and watched table 12 from the corner of his eye. Alexis opened the folder. She saw the bill first, then the napkin. She didn't gasp, didn't freeze. She just read it. Once. Twice. Then she looked up. Not at Evan. At Tony. Her face didn't change, but something in her eyes did. Something sharp. Tony noticed. Evan saw the exact moment he realized she knew. The bodyguard's expression flickered, just for a second. Then he turned and walked toward the kitchen. Not the front door. The kitchen. Alexis stood. She didn't rush, didn't call out. She just placed $200 bills on the table and walked toward the bar where Evan was standing. "Who are you?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but it wasn't soft. Evan met her eyes. "Just a waiter." "No," Alexis said. "You're not." Before Evan could respond, Tony reappeared from the hallway near the restrooms. He wasn't alone. A man in a server's uniform walked beside him, not one of the regular staff. Evan had never seen him before. The man glanced at Alexis, then at Tony. Then he turned and walked straight out the back exit. Tony followed. Alexis didn't move. She stood next to Evan at the bar, her hands flat on the counter. "He's gone," Evan said. "I know." "You should call someone." Alexis looked at him. "Who?" Evan didn't have an answer. She exhaled slowly. "What did you see?" A man gave him an envelope. Tony kept checking the back exit. "Like he was waiting for you to finish so he could move you." "Move me where?" "I don't know. But it wasn't to your car." Alexis stared at the back hallway where Tony had disappeared. Her jaw tightened. "He's worked for me for 6 years. I'm sorry." "Don't be." Her voice was flat. "You just saved my life." Evan didn't know what to say to that. He wiped down the counter even though it was already clean. Alexis didn't leave. She stood there like she was trying to decide what came next. Finally, she spoke again. "What's your name?" "Evan." "Evan." She repeated it like she was memorizing it. "Do you have a phone?" He pulled it out of his pocket. It was old, cracked screen. She didn't comment on it. She just took it, typed something, and handed it back. Her number was saved in his contacts. "If anything happens," Alexis said. "If anyone asks you about tonight, call me first." "Why would anyone ask me?" "Because you're the only person in this room who saw what I didn't." She turned and walked toward the front entrance. Evan watched her go. She didn't look back, didn't hesitate, just stepped out into the cold Chicago night like nothing had happened. But something had. Evan looked down at his phone, at the number she'd left, at the name next to it. Alexis Vale. He put the phone back in his pocket and finished his shift. He didn't tell anyone what happened, didn't explain why his hands were still shaking when he clocked out at 2 a.m. He walked to his car in the parking lot and sat in the driver's seat for 5 minutes before starting the engine. The city was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt heavy. Evan thought about his daughter, about the bills stacked on his kitchen counter, about the fact that he had just stepped into something he didn't understand. But he also thought about Alexis Vale sitting alone at table 12, about the way she looked when she realized the person protecting her had turned into the person she needed protection from. He started the car and drove home. He didn't know it yet, but his life had just changed. Evan didn't sleep that night. He got home at 3 in the morning, checked on his daughter, and sat at the kitchen table with his phone in front of him. The number was still there. Alexis Vale. He didn't know why he kept checking. Maybe because part of him didn't believe it had actually happened. His mother had left a note on the counter. Mia ate all her dinner, asleep by 8:30. See you tomorrow. Evan folded the note and set it aside. He looked at the stack of bills next to the coffee maker. Electric. Water. Mia's school fees. He'd been 3 weeks behind on rent twice this year already. His manager at Lexington had been decent about the schedule, but decent only went so far. He thought about Tony, about the envelope, about the way Alexis had looked at him when she realized the person she trusted had already made a choice. Evan knew that look. He'd seen it in the mirror 2 years ago when his ex-wife told him she was leaving, not because of another man, not because of money, just because she was tired. Tired of being a mother. Tired of being married. Tired of him. She signed the papers and left Chicago a month later. Mia asked about her sometimes, but not as much anymore. Evan stood and walked to his daughter's room. The door was cracked open. Mia was curled under her blanket, her stuffed rabbit tucked against her chest. Her hair was tangled across the pillow. He thought about brushing it, but he didn't want to wake her. He went back to the kitchen and finally turned off his phone. Tomorrow, he would go back to work. Tomorrow, nothing would change, except everything already had. The next afternoon, Evan's phone buzzed while he was making Mia lunch. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then he remembered. Hello? Evan. The voice was calm, controlled. It's Alexis Vale. He set down the butter knife. Hi. I need to see you. Why? Because Tony disappeared last night, Alexis said, and I need to know exactly what you saw. Evan glanced at Mia, who was coloring at the table. I already told you. I know. But things are moving faster than I expected. Her voice shifted slightly. Can you meet me this afternoon? I have my daughter. Bring her. Evan frowned. Where? Somewhere public. There's a cafe on West Monroe. Bluebird. Do you know it? Yeah. 3 o'clock, Alexis said. I'll be there. She hung up before he could respond. Evan stared at his phone. Mia looked up from her drawing. Who was that? She asked. Someone from work, Evan said. It wasn't a lie. Not exactly. Bluebird Cafe was small, quiet, the kind of place where people worked on laptops and didn't look up when someone walked in. Evan arrived 10 minutes early with Mia's hand in his. She wore her purple jacket and light-up sneakers. She looked around the cafe with wide eyes. Can I get hot chocolate? She asked. Yeah. Go pick a table. Mia ran toward the window seat. Evan ordered at the counter and turned to find Alexis already sitting across from his daughter. She wasn't wearing a suit today, just a black sweater and jeans. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. She looked younger, more human. Mia was showing her the drawing she'd brought. Alexis was nodding like she actually cared. Evan walked over with 2 mugs and a juice box. He set them down and sat next to Mia. This is really good, Alexis said, looking at the drawing. It was a house with a lopsided tree and a stick figure family. Is this you? Mia pointed. That's me. That's Daddy. That's Grandma. Where's your mom? Alexis asked. She left, Mia said simply. But it's okay. Daddy makes good pancakes. Evan's chest tightened. He handed Mia the juice box. Why don't you color for a bit, kiddo? Mia nodded and pulled out her crayons. Alexis watched her for a moment, then looked at Evan. Thank you for coming. You said Tony disappeared. He did. I had someone check his apartment this morning. Empty. His phone's off. Bank account was cleared out 2 days ago. Alexis wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. He planned this. Planned what, exactly? I don't know yet. But I think he was selling information, not trying to kill me. At least not directly. She met his eyes. The man you saw, the one who gave him the envelope. Did you get a look at his face? Not really. Dark coat, average height. He didn't stay long. Alexis nodded. That matches what my security team pulled from the restaurant footage. You have a security team? I do now. Her voice was tight. Tony was supposed to be enough. I trusted him. Evan didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He worked for me for 6 years, Alexis continued. I thought I knew him, thought he was loyal. Turns out loyalty has a price, and someone met it. Mia looked up from her drawing. Are you Daddy's friend? Alexis smiled. It was small, but real. I think so. Is that okay? Mia nodded. Daddy doesn't have a lot of friends. Mia, Evan said quietly. It's true. His daughter went back to coloring. Alexis looked at Evan. She's right, isn't she? I work nights. Don't have a lot of time for friends. I work all the time, Alexis said. Don't have a lot of time for people. She looked down at her coffee. Tony was the closest thing I had to someone I could trust. And now I'm sitting in a cafe with a waiter I don't know, trying to figure out who wants to destroy me. Evan leaned back in his chair. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only person who saw what I didn't, and because you didn't have to warn me. You could have walked away, but you didn't. I couldn't. Why not? Evan glanced at Mia. Because I have a daughter who needs me alive, and I figured you might have people who need you alive too. Alexis didn't respond right away. She just looked at him like she was trying to decide if he was real. Finally, she said, I owe you my life. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. Her voice was firm, and I don't say that lightly. Mia held up her drawing. Done. Evan looked at it. She'd added another stick figure. This one had long hair and was standing next to him. Who's that? He asked. Alexis, Mia said. She's nice. Alexis's expression softened. She looked at the drawing for a long moment, then at Mia. Can I keep this? Mia's face lit up. Really? Really? Mia carefully tore the page out of her sketchbook and handed it over. Alexis folded it gently and slipped it into her bag. Thank you, she said. Evan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A text from his manager. Can you cover Jason's shift tonight? 6 to close, he typed back. Yeah, Alexis noticed. You work tonight? Every night. Who watches her? My mom. Alexis nodded slowly. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't. Evan stood. We should go. I need to get her fed before my shift. Alexis stood too. Evan, he turned. If anything happens, if you see anything strange, anyone watching you, call me. Why would anyone be watching me? Because Tony knows you saw him, and if he's working for someone, they know too. Evan's stomach dropped. He hadn't thought about that, hadn't thought past the moment he slipped that napkin into the check folder. I'm just a waiter, he said. Not anymore. Alexis's voice was quiet. You stepped into something the moment you warned me. I'm sorry. But you need to be careful. Mia tugged on his hand. Daddy, I'm hungry. Evan looked down at her, then back at Alexis. I'll be careful. She nodded. I mean it. Call me if anything feels wrong. Evan took Mia's hand and walked out of the cafe. He didn't look back, but he felt Alexis watching him until the door closed behind them. The next 3 days were normal. Too normal. Evan worked his shifts, came home, made breakfast for Mia, slept 4 hours, did it again. But he couldn't stop checking over his shoulder, couldn't stop noticing the cars parked across the street. Couldn't stop thinking about what Alexis had said. You stepped into something. On the fourth night, his phone rang at 1 in the morning. He was walking to his car after his shift when he saw the name. Alexis Vale. Hello? Evan. Her voice was strained. I need you to listen carefully. He stopped walking. What's wrong? Someone leaked internal documents from my company this morning. Contract details, financial projections, things only a few people had access to. She took a breath. Tony was one of them. So it was him. It was. But it's worse than that. The leak went to a competitor. I just lost a $50 million deal because they knew exactly what I was offering before I walked into the room. Evan didn't know what to say. $50 million. He couldn't even imagine that kind of money. The board is panicking, Alexis continued. The press is already running stories. My reputation is on the line, and Tony's still gone. Can't you trace the leak? We're trying, but he covered his tracks, and whoever's paying him is good at staying invisible. Her voice cracked slightly. I've spent 15 years building this company, and it's falling apart because I trusted the wrong person. Evan leaned against his car. The parking lot was empty, cold. He could see his breath in the air. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. This isn't your fault. Then why are you calling me? Alexis was quiet for a moment. Then she said, because you're the only person who believed me when it mattered. Everyone else thought I was paranoid, thought I was overreacting. But you saw what I didn't, and you acted. Evan closed his eyes. I just wrote a note. You saved my life, Alexis said. And now, I'm losing everything anyway. He didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to fix something that big. Where are you right now? He asked. My office, trying to figure out how to stop the bleeding. Have you slept? No. You should. Alexis laughed. It was bitter. I can't. If I stop, I'll have to think about the fact that I'm completely alone in this. Evan opened his eyes. You're not. Yes, I am. My board doesn't trust me. My investors are spooked. The media's circling. And the one person who was supposed to protect me sold me out for money. Her voice broke. I don't have anyone. Evan thought about Mia, about the way she'd drawn Alexis into their family without even thinking about it, about the way Alexis had folded that drawing like it was worth something. You have me, he said. The line went quiet. I'm just a waiter, Evan added. I don't know anything about business or contracts or $50 million deals, but I know what it's like to feel alone, and I know you don't deserve that. Alexis didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. Why do you care? Because you're not a bad person, and bad things are happening to you because someone decided money was more important than loyalty. That's not fair. Life's not fair. I know, but that doesn't mean you should go through it alone. Alexis exhaled. It sounded like she'd been holding her breath. Thank you. For what? For reminding me that not everyone is Tony. Evan smiled slightly. Get some sleep, even if it's just an hour. I will. Good night. Evan. Good night. He hung up and stood in the parking lot for another minute. Then he got in his car and drove home. When he walked into his apartment, his mother was asleep on the couch. Mia was in her bed, tangled in her blankets like always. Evan sat at the kitchen table and stared at his phone. He thought about Alexis sitting in her office, alone, trying to hold together something that was falling apart. He thought about the way she'd looked at Mia's drawing, like it was the first real thing she'd seen in a long time. He didn't know if he could help her, didn't know if there was anything a single dad from the South Side could do for a billionaire. But he knew he wasn't going to walk away. 2 days later, the story hit the news. Evan saw it on his phone during his break. Vale Industries in crisis. Billionaire CEO faces internal betrayal. The article didn't name Tony, but it didn't have to. The details were enough. Leaked contracts, lost deals, a company in chaos. Evan scrolled through the comments. Most of them were brutal. She should have seen this coming. Billionaires don't get sympathy. Bet she deserved it. He turned off his phone and went back to work. But his chest felt tight. He thought about calling her, then decided against it. She didn't need another person asking if she was okay. When his shift ended, he found a text waiting. "I have to do a press conference tomorrow. I don't want to." "But I don't have a choice," Evan typed back. "You'll be fine." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "I'm scared." Evan stared at the screen. He'd never heard her say that before. Not out loud. Not even implied. He typed carefully. "Scared of what? That I'll walk out there and realize I really am alone. That no one believes me. That everything I built was just luck. And now it's gone." Evan sat in his car and read the message 3 times. Then he called her. She answered on the first ring. "Evan." "You're not alone," he said. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true. And tomorrow, when you walk out there, you're not going to be thinking about the people who don't believe you. You're going to be thinking about the ones who do. There aren't many of those." "There's one," Evan said, "and she drew you into her family because she thought you were worth it." Alexis went quiet. Then she said, "Mia." "Yeah, Mia. And me. And probably a lot of other people you don't even know about yet. But you're not alone. You just feel like it because the loudest voices are the cruelest ones. I don't know if I can do this. You can, because you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you." Evan leaned back in his seat. "And because you don't need the whole world on your side, you just need the right people." Alexis took a shaky breath. "When did you get so good at pep talks?" "I have a 7-year-old. You learn fast." She laughed. It was quiet, but real. "Thank you. Anytime. Evan." "Yeah? If I survive this, I owe you dinner. A real one. Not as a client and a waiter. Just as 2 people." Evan smiled. "I'd like that." "Good, because I would too." She hung up. Evan sat in his car for a long time, staring at the dark street ahead of him. He didn't know what happened next. Didn't know if Alexis would make it through the press conference. Didn't know if Tony would ever be found. But he knew one thing. He wasn't just a waiter anymore. He was someone who mattered to someone who mattered. And that was enough. The press conference was scheduled for 2 o'clock. Evan wasn't supposed to be there. He had a shift at Lexington that started at 6, and Mia had a playdate that afternoon. But when he turned on the news during lunch, he saw the live coverage starting. Alexis Vale to address company crisis. He sat on the couch with Mia coloring beside him and watched the screen. The camera showed a podium with microphones. Reporters filled the room. The energy felt hostile even through the television. Then Alexis walked out. She wore a navy suit. Her hair was pulled back. She looked tired, but she didn't look broken. She stood at the podium and looked directly into the cameras. "Good afternoon," Alexis said. Her voice was steady. "I'm here to address the recent events surrounding Vale Industries and the internal breach that has affected our operations." The room was silent. 10 days ago, I learned that someone I trusted had been selling confidential information to a competitor. That person was my head of security, Tony Brennan, who had worked for me for 6 years. I believed he was loyal. I was wrong. She didn't flinch when she said it, didn't soften it. The leaked documents resulted in the loss of a major contract. They damaged relationships with investors. They created doubt about the integrity of my company. And I take full responsibility for that. I hired Tony. I trusted him. And I failed to see the warning signs. Evan leaned forward. Mia looked up at him. "Is that your friend?" she asked. "Yeah," Evan said quietly. She looked sad. She is. On the screen, Alexis continued. But I want to be clear about something. This breach happened because one person chose money over integrity. Not because Vale Industries is weak. Not because our work is flawed. And not because I don't know how to lead. Her voice hardened slightly. I have spent 15 years building this company from nothing. I have made mistakes. I will make more. But I have never stopped fighting for what I believe in. And I'm not going to start now. The reporter started shouting questions. Alexis raised a hand. I know there are questions. I know there's speculation. But the truth is simple. Tony Brennan is under investigation. The authorities are involved. And Vale Industries will recover. Because we always do. She stepped back from the podium. The camera followed her as she walked off the stage without looking back. Evan turned off the television. His chest felt tight, but not in a bad way. He thought about the woman he'd seen sitting alone at table 12, the one who looked like she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone on her side. She wasn't that person anymore. Mia tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, can we call her? Maybe later, kiddo. I want to tell her she did good. Evan smiled. Yeah, she did. 3 hours later, Evan's phone rang while he was driving Mia to his mother's house. He answered on Bluetooth. Evan. It was Alexis. She sounded exhausted. I saw the press conference. And? You were amazing. Alexis laughed. It was shaky. I almost threw up beforehand. You didn't look like it. Good. That was the point. She exhaled. It's over. For now, anyway. The board is still furious. The investors are still nervous. But at least I said what I needed to say. You did more than that. You reminded people who you are. I reminded myself, Alexis said quietly. I almost didn't go through with it. I stood backstage and thought about walking out the back door, just disappearing, letting someone else clean up the mess. What stopped you? You. Evan frowned. Me? What you said last night, about not needing the whole world, just the right people. Her voice softened. I realized I was so focused on everyone who doubted me that I forgot about the ones who didn't. Evan glanced at Mia in the rearview mirror. She was looking out the window, humming to herself. I'm glad, he said. Me too. Alexis was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Tony turned himself in this morning. Evan's hands tightened on the wheel. What? He walked into a police station 2 hours after the press conference, confessed to everything, selling information, taking bribes, all of it. Why? I don't know. Maybe he couldn't live with it. Maybe whoever paid him cut him loose. Either way, it's over. Evan didn't know what to say. He'd spent the last week waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Tony to come back, for something worse to happen. But it was over. How do you feel? He asked. Relieved. Angry. Sad. Alexis sighed. Mostly sad. I keep thinking about the person he used to be, or the person I thought he was. I don't know if that version ever existed. Maybe it did. And then something changed. Maybe. She didn't sound convinced. The investigators said he was paid $75,000 for the information. That's it. $75,000. 6 years of loyalty, and that's what it cost to buy him. Evan thought about his rent, about the bills on his counter. $75,000 would change his life, but it wouldn't make him betray someone who trusted him. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. You're the one who saved me from him. Alexis's voice steadied. Speaking of which, I owe you dinner. Evan smiled. You don't owe me anything. I know. But I want to. If you're willing. I am. Good. Because I'm tired of sitting in boardrooms with people who only care about numbers. I want to sit across from someone who cares about people. Evan pulled into his mother's driveway. Mia was already unbuckling her seatbelt. When? He asked. Tomorrow night. If you're free. I work. Take the night off. I can't afford to. Alexis didn't respond right away. Then she said, Evan, let me do this. Please. He thought about saying no, about insisting he didn't need her help. But the truth was, he was tired. Tired of working every night. Tired of choosing between paying rent and buying Mia new shoes. Tired of pretending he had it all under control. Okay, he said. Okay. Alexis sounded lighter. I'll text you the address, 7 o'clock. I'll be there. She hung up. Evan sat in the car for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. Mia knocked on the window from outside. Daddy, come on. He got out and walked her to the door. His mother opened it before they reached the steps. You look happy, she said. Do I? Yeah, you do. She smiled. It's nice. Evan kissed Mia on the head and watched her run inside. His mother leaned against the doorframe. Who is she? She asked. Who? Whoever's making you smile like that. Evan shook his head. It's not like that. Sure it's not. Mom, I'm just saying. You haven't looked like this since before Emily left. So whoever she is, I like her already. Evan didn't argue. He just hugged his mother and drove home. When he walked into his apartment, he realized she was right. He did feel happy. For the first time in a long time. The restaurant Alexis chose was quiet. Upscale, but not flashy. The kind of place where people went to actually talk instead of be seen. Evan walked in wearing the only suit he owned. It was a little tight in the shoulders, but it was clean. Alexis was already there. She sat at a corner table, wearing a simple black dress. No jewelry, no makeup, just her. She stood when she saw him. You came. Of course I did. They sat. A waiter brought water and menus. Evan glanced at the prices and tried not to react. Order whatever you want, Alexis said. I'm fine with anything. Evan. She looked at him. You don't have to do that here. This isn't Lexington. You're not the waiter. You're my guest. He nodded slowly. Okay. They ordered. The food came. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Alexis set down her fork. I need to tell you something, she said. Evan looked up. What? I've been thinking about what you said, about not needing the whole world, just the right people. She met his eyes. You were right. I spent so long trying to prove myself to everyone that I forgot what it felt like to just be myself. You don't have to prove anything to me. I know. That's why I like you. She smiled. It was small but genuine. You see me. Not my company. Not my money. Just me. And that's rare. Evan didn't know what to say. He thought about the woman who used to sit alone at table 12, the one who never looked at her phone, the one who seemed like she'd built walls so high she couldn't see over them anymore. I see you too, he said. What do you see? Someone who's tired of being strong all the time. Someone who wants to stop fighting for 5 minutes and just breathe. Alexis's eyes softened. Yeah, that's exactly it. They talked for another hour. About Mia, about Evan's life before he became a single dad. About Alexis's childhood and how she built her company from nothing. She told him about the nights she slept in her office because she couldn't afford rent, about the first deal she closed, about the moment she realized she'd made it. But making it didn't feel the way I thought it would, Alexis said. I thought I'd feel accomplished, fulfilled. Instead, I just felt lonely. Why? Because success doesn't fill the space people used to occupy. And somewhere along the way, I stopped letting people in. It was easier that way. Safer. Until it wasn't. Until it wasn't, she agreed. And then you came along. A waiter with a cracked phone and a daughter who draws stick figures. And you reminded me what it feels like to be seen as a person instead of a transaction. Evan looked at her. Really looked at her. You saved me too. You know. Alexis frowned. How? I've spent 2 years just surviving, working, paying bills, making sure Mia's okay. but I forgot what it felt like to matter outside of being her dad. You reminded me. You matter, Evan. A lot. So do you. They sat there for a moment, just looking at each other. The restaurant buzzed around them, but it felt distant, like they were in their own world. Finally, Alexis said, I meant what I said earlier, about owing you. You don't owe me anything. I owe you my life, twice. Once in the restaurant, and once when you kept me from drowning in my own loneliness. Evan reached across the table. He didn't think about it, just did it. Alexis looked down at his hand, then placed hers in it. So what now? He asked. Now? Alexis smiled. Now I ask if you'd be willing to have dinner with me again. Not because I owe you, but because I want to. As what? As a woman asking a man if he'd like to spend more time together. No titles, no roles, just us. Evan thought about Mia, about his apartment, about the fact that his life was a mess and hers was a boardroom. He thought about how different they were, how impossible this should be. But then he thought about the way she looked at Mia's drawing, about the way she'd called him when she was falling apart, about the way she made him feel like he was more than just a guy trying to survive. Yeah, he said, I'd like that. Alexis's smile widened. It was the first real smile he'd seen from her. Not polite, not controlled, just happy. Good, she said, because I would too. They left the restaurant an hour later. Evan walked her to her car. She turned to face him before getting in. Thank you, Alexis said. For what? For seeing me. For saving me. For reminding me I'm not alone. Evan smiled. Anytime. She got in her car and drove away. Evan stood in the parking lot and watched her go. Then he pulled out his phone and texted his mother. Can you watch Mia tomorrow night too? The reply came immediately. Of course. You seeing her again? Yeah. Good. She's good for you. Evan smiled and put his phone away. He walked to his car and drove home. When he got there, Mia was asleep in her room. He sat at the kitchen table and looked at the stack of bills. They were still there, still unpaid, still waiting. But for the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel like he was drowning. He felt like he was breathing, and that was enough. The next morning, Evan woke up to a text from Alexis. Thank you for last night. I haven't felt that calm in years, he typed back. Me neither. 3 dots appeared. Then a message. Mia's drawing is on my desk, right next to my coffee. It makes me smile every time I see it. Evan smiled. She'd like that. I know. Tell her, I said. Thank you. I will. Evan set his phone down and walked to Mia's room. She was awake, sitting up in bed with her stuffed rabbit. Morning, kiddo. Morning, Daddy. She looked at him. Are you happy? Yeah, I am. Good. You should be happy more. Evan sat on the edge of her bed. You're pretty smart, you know that? Mia grinned. I know. He hugged her. And for the first time in a long time, he believed that everything was going to be okay. Not because his problems were solved, not because his life was perfect, but because he wasn't facing it alone anymore. And neither was Alexis.